It is my privilege and joy that we can continue our Bible study that we started last time about the three angels' messages. And we have today the subtitle, A Moment of Destiny. We have seen that Jesus compares our life, our beliefs, and our character with a house. And the house must be built on a foundation. And the foundation decides about what we believe and about what character we bear. So there are only two kinds of character and beliefs that are there in the world. And there are only two possible foundations for them. It's the unchangeable foundation and the changeable foundation. And everyone who builds on a changeable foundation, evidently his beliefs and his character will not stand the proof of the rain, the proof of the information that comes to divide the world in these two categories of people that have built on different foundations. We have seen the 5 foolish virgins are at a closed door. Why? What have they done wrong? What have these people that Jesus addresses in Matthew 7:22-23 done wrong? Because they say, many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works. And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. They say, Lord, Lord. They don't do evil things outsidely. The 5 foolish virgins wait together with the wise virgins. They want to see their Lord coming. They want to prepare his way. Yet something is wrong in their life. What is it? It is that they built on the wrong foundation. So what matters in life is on which foundation are your beliefs built. We have seen that the story of finitude or evanescence has a beginning and also an end. That which was perishable came into the world through Lucifer, the first angel, with the greatest responsibility, who one day entered a process of self-deception by which he brought the whole universe into a danger, and he brought some of the creatures of God to come to an end. But God never created things that it should come to an end. For this cause, he makes a work to separate, to eliminate that which is finite out of his creation. And for this, he made a plan. And we are standing in the final stages of this time period, of this plan of salvation. The 3 angels that we study are coming to bring this final stage to an end. They are the last message of God. They are there by which God will create circumstances through which all currently living persons can exchange their finiteness, their dead life, with an everlasting life, with infinity. For this, we study these messages, because we are at the end of time, and every human being that lives on earth, that has reason, must come to final decision. But on what shall this final decision be made? Evidently, it can be made only on 2 foundations. Either the one will put their foundations on the unchangeable, and the other will put their foundations on the changeable, on that what they think is relative. And it will be that would be divide the world in these 2 categories in a final way, as we will see. But before we come to the end of this final work of redemption, let's look to the beginning. How did the ephemeral come into existence? How could it appear in a creation of God that was made to function and to exist for eternity? How could the perishable come into existence. It is by an inexplicable self-deception, in an attempt to change the unchangeable. By an inexplicable self-deception, in an attempt to change the unchangeable. Let's see how it happens so that we can repeat what we learned in our last lesson. In all eras of creation, we find the changeable and the unchangeable. It doesn't matter if it's in the matter, if it's in plants, if it's in animal or in the human. We find the changeable, that is in the appearance, the size, the color, and we find the unchangeable, which is the structure, the functions, the basic needs, the laws by which all functions, the dependency of every creature. Those are things that are all unchangeable and decisive for our decisions. Decisive to have clear beliefs and a character that is beautiful in the image of God. We need to know and build on the unchangeable. So angels also have in themselves changeable things like appearance, size, colors, skills, and the unchangeable. The structure, the functions, the basic needs, the law by which they function and their dependency. What did Lucifer attempt to change? If he would have attempted to change the changeable, well, that would never be something wrong, because the changeable is made to be able to be changed. But his attempt was to change the unchangeable. But God made the unchangeable unchangeable. So that is a try. That is an attempt. That is purely irrational. It doesn't make sense. Sin never appeared because God gave the ability to the angels or to the humans to reject His love. Like there would be a choice to reject God's love, from which we are dependent, like of the air we breathe. So, the only way sin could enter was to a deception in an attempt to change that would always be unchangeable. The unchangeable will never be changeable. And that's the only basis on which one can stand. So, since God made the spirits to have a self-government, to direct themselves, the spirit needs clear reference points. And the scale is the best picture for this. So, in order to guide yourself by yourself, you need a fixed point, a reference that is not movable and changeable. And that God put there for the human or for the spirits to orient. So like when the captain of a ship wants to orient where he has to go, and he has not a clear compass to show him where is the north, he has no way to ever reach the destiny he wants to reach. So to reach a destination, you must have a clear reference. You must have a map. You must have something that you orient after that brings you to that point. If we would not have no self-government, then reference is not necessary because it's all set how things should work. But if someone needs to direct himself and govern himself, he needs a fixed point to govern it. So that's why God put there for the human or for all spirits, the unchangeable, a clear reference, the law, the conscience of dependency. And He put needs there, and all needs are good. Love, justice, freedom. There's no need that is not good. This need needs to be taken from a source of information which can only be God for the moral spirits. And the task to be accomplished can only be accomplished by having those informations applied, putting them into action. So here, the spirit must bind himself to trust. Trust is always the putting your feet on a foundation. And if the foundation is absolute, the faith in the information that is given in order to fulfill the task. It's like the car that needs to get to a point, but without gas it cannot get. So when the Spirit takes in that information, that makes him go. He can take clear decisions and he can accomplish the task he was made to accomplish. This is very clear in the way God made the Spirit, especially the Spirit with moral, to function. There was a perfect construction. There was no choice to do evil. There can never be a choice to attempt the impossible, because what Lucifer attempted was never something that is possible, but that is impossible. The idea that he could be a God, that he could go and pass the border between effect and cause, is something that is inexplicable. But it's even more inexplicable that he continued in this process. We don't know how long this process went, but it went as long as he realized that he was wrong and still continued. And that is even more inexplicable. How could a reasonable being put his reason aside and attempt to change the unchangeable while he realizes that that is not possible? This is the mystery of iniquity. We only can see from the result what happened, but we can never explain exactly the process. But it happened inside, and God could not stop the process because the Spirit is a closed system. He governs himself. He cannot be governed from outside. He might be destroyed from outside. God can take him the power away, but he cannot act in his case because he made him to govern himself. So, changing himself into a God by deception, evidently, the thing on which he trusted now is himself. The unchangeable law is not his anymore, because all is now changeable. His law of dependency does not exist. His dependent for needs is not there. He does not need a God, and he thinks he does not need a binding, because now he trusts in himself, which is a terrible deception because it doesn't work. And then he says, the information that I have to do what I want to do is not coming from outside. I produce it myself. So that's why he thinks his decisions are free, but they are now unfree, and the task that had to be accomplished is not possible to be accomplished. So he has destroyed himself. And having destroyed himself, since it was a process, when he aroused to that moment that he rejected the truth, even though he saw that he was wrong, there was no way for him to return. When God created this earth and man on the earth, already the rebellion of Lucifer and of the angel had taken place. They were already put out of heaven. It was clear God gave them a space where they had to exist. And they were, in a certain way, free even to tempt others into that same direction. So when man was created and rebellion already existed in order to preserve man's everlasting life, he put a monument in the midst of the garden. And that monument in the midst of the garden was very clear. This tree is not a temptation. This tree is a monument that is there with the purpose for protection. Now, some people come sometimes and tell me, well, I would have not reacted like this if the circumstances would have not been like that. So we put the problem on the circumstances. But the circumstances, friends, are never the problem. It is the way I react to the circumstances. That's the problem. And if I would react correctly to the circumstances wouldn't do me anything wrong. It's just I am the one that does the wrong to me or to others while I want to change circumstances. So man and the tree of good and evil put in the midst of the garden was not a temptation for Adam. It was a monument to realize that the rebellion exists and that there is no alternative for the unchangeable. They had to know that there is no alternative to God. They cannot exist without Him. And that tree should show them clearly existence without God is not possible. That's why it was for their protection, for their visible thing, that they are creatures in need of God. And there is no alternative to God. That tree was put there so man should never eat from it. Because if it's poison, how can you approach it? If it kills you and you have no need to die, how would you ever dare to go close to it? So the purpose of the tree was not to tempt the human being. It was to make him clear his position. It was to put there the unchangeable, the foundation for his existence can never be changed. And God wanted him to not become finite because he was made to live eternally. His perishableness, his finiteness would only come into existence when he would go against that which is unchangeable. So the tree is never a danger. The tree is there for protection. Now, let's look a little bit closer to the way God made the spirit of Adam and of man think. Yes, man is a soul, that's why he has a spirit and a body and a brain, and he must do everything with his body, which he does by putting his brain into action by his own decisions. So he was made to govern himself. And for that self-government, him was given a clear identity who he is. And this identity was given to him together with the needs of love and justice, freedom, life, marriage, and so on. And he had to take all this from a source of information in order to accomplish his task. And God gave him that clear compass, that he should know where is the way to go. And then he had the unchangeable as his orientation, the law, that he could never be independent, that his needs could never be put away, or his species could never be changed. And while man trusted and bound himself to God, he was secure in all the other things. Because now God gives him the information what to do, and with the tree he gives him also information what not to do. He says, you die when you eat. Now, having the right foundation, his beliefs are right. He knows that he is dependent. He knows that his life can never be in his own hands. It's given him by God to use it and to do something with it. He knows that all the words of God and all the law of God is unchangeable. That's why he believes. And when he introduced the information through faith, his decision can only be no to eat from the tree. He could never take another decision. And I'm so glad that we can have an order of function of things. So let's go backwards. All our decisions are taken on the basis of what we believe, of our faith. But all our faith is made on the what we trust on. And what we trust on must be the unchangeable. So, if this order is clear, let's repeat it once again. God gave us the unchangeable as clear thing on what to trust. And then he gave us his word, that we should introduce it through faith by understanding it. And whatever we believe as truth, the information we introduce will always make and determine the decisions. This is the order. And it's a clear order. And it makes things nice to see. Perfect construction. No choice to do the wrong. Adam never was given the choice to change something that is changeable, because that he could change. But he wanted to change the impossible. So how did he come into self-deception? Here comes the serpent as the temptation, and the serpent says, you live when you eat. Now, he could only take that into consideration and putting things away by changing the unchangeable. But in order to attempt to change the unchangeable, he had to become that what he could never become, that is a God. So thinking he's a God, how he came to that idea is inexplicable. But we can see it on the effect that every human being that we have on earth believes that they are gods. It's in the heart. It's the deception of the heart that God speaks about in his word. The deceitfulness of the heart. Above all things, to believe something about you that is impossible. But this was the only way that he could put away the unchangeable. The foundation on what he was built, he could put only it away while he would become that foundation. This is the process that happened because we see it now in that it exists in every one of us. We are born to believe we are gods. Now the unchangeable does not exist. All is changeable. I am not dependent on any law from God. I can not depend on my needs. I can change my species. I do not need God. And I don't need to trust and bind. But since this is not a choice, but binding trust must be exercised no matter what, Adam bound himself to Eve, and Eve bound herself to the serpent. And that is trusting. But they only could trust the serpent because they became in themselves self-deceived. And God could not stop this process. And here, when they believe that they're gods, now they believe that you live when you eat. They think their life is not in danger. What was true before now is untrue. And now their choice is very clear. They say yes to eat from the tree. So their yes, their decision was dependent on their faith. But their faith was dependent on what they trust. And since they trusted something that is not trustable because of self-deception, here we see the order of things. We can only fail in our life having the wrong foundation. But we can have only the wrong foundation, believing that we are someone that we can never be. So Adam could not fulfill his tasks anymore, and he destroyed himself. Yet God made a salvation for him because he could still see that he deceived himself. Could you not see that he deceived himself? Again, he is not savable. So salvation is only possible by understanding the self-deception of the human being. So in order that it needs to be exchanged. So God made a plan of salvation, and we are in his final stage. The plan of salvation goes over 7,000 years from the apostasy of Adam from God until the first coming of Christ. There were 4,000 years. Christ came to destroy Adam on the cross, the old man, and come up from the grave as the new man. This was symbolized for 4,000 years in the sacrificial service. The first thing that God did when Adam fell, he made them garments from lambs. He slew the lamb, showing them the way of salvation, the exchange of life. So all people are given the opportunity to give up the old, dead life in order to choose the new, eternal life. Until the second coming of Christ, every human being must have taken this final decision for his life. Because after this second coming of Christ, the 1,000 years, there will be the final judgment and the execution of it. And we are living in this red point where everyone needs to decide. And in this red point, the message of the three angels come to make the world ripe. So Christ comes the second time when the harvest is ripe. We find that immediately after the messages of these three angels were said, in the next Bible verse, Revelation 14:14, it says, "And I looked, and behold a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle." And I read further here, verse 15, "And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, Thrust in thy sickle, and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. And he that sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. And another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar which had power over fire, and cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in thy sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the wine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. And the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth, and gathered the wine of the earth, and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress even unto the horse bridles by the space of 1,600 furlongs. So here we have this example that he comes when the harvest is ripe. And there are only two categories of people that are represented with these two symbols. We have the grain and we have the vine. And this is almost the same thing that, the same parable that Jesus gives us in Matthew 13 about the sower and the seed. So we read from verse 24, where it says, Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while man slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst not thou sow good seed into thy field? From whence then had it tares? He said unto them, An enemy has done this. The servant said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, No, lest while ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of harvest, I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. And Jesus himself explains this because his disciples asking him what it meant. And he says in verse 37 and on, He answered them and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. So here we find two parables, two pictures that show us the two categories of people that are represented on earth. They're not more, Just two. The one that have a clear foundation, and the others that have a changeable foundation. And the three angels' messages come to make the harvest ripen. Without them, it might not ripen. That's why God gives them, to bring in the harvest, to ripen, that everyone should take his final decision. Every human being is called upon to make a final decision. So how do you know to which category you belong? Because we are convinced that even the foolish virgins came in and were surprised that they were rejected. Somewhere they got deceived in themselves. Somewhere the clear foundation did not become theirs, so that they could trust on that and have the right faith and have the right lamp and the right light to shine the world. So things are simple. These people know their foundation because it's something unchangeable. It's the law. It's the way we were made to function. Those things that we mentioned before that are unchangeable. They know them and they trust them. That's why their faith is clear. This one, don't know them or ignore them, even though it was given to them. That's why no one will have an excuse, because this angels brings the message that everyone should have the right foundation. I'll give you just a simple example. In these people, the foundation is God's law. It means that things cannot happen by chance. In these people, they don't have the law of God as their foundation, even though they might be very Christian-like, but they believe that they can get sick by chance. They believe sickness is just a chance of what happens in your circumstances. They do not believe the truth because their foundation is not the unchangeable. Is not there where there is a law. There can be no chances. Where there is a law, never you can get sick by accident. It's just not possible. But the whole world believes in sickness by accident. Isn't it amazing? But they are Christians. They believe, they are ready to see Jesus coming on the earth, on the heavens, in the clouds of heaven. But they will have no entrance there. Because their faith is not based on that is unchangeable. Their faith is based on assumption on themselves and on trusting humans and the so-called science. There will be no excuse for no one. They might come to the door and be surprised. But God will make them clear when and where they rejected to put for their trust the unchangeable foundation. That's why they must be left out. So how do you know? How do I know that I do not base my trust and my beliefs on something that is unchangeable? How do I know that it's unchangeable? I must be aware of myself. I must be aware on what I base myself. The Bible is the base or the content of belief. But in order to believe correctly and to have that character, I need to have a foundation for my trust. And that foundation for my trust must be that what God gave us as an absolute orientation point, which is His unchangeable law, which is simple. And the way we function is simple. But ignorance of it will prove for many their destiny to be lost eternally. But I don't want to be among them, and I hope you don't either. So let us be among those that says here in verse 43, Matthew 13, then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Our Father. That's where we have our foundation. We know His law. We know the way He built us. And we want to be shining like Him in His kingdom. May God help us to reach that goal, to be the light of the world in these last days and bring many people from their darkness, from their unknowledge of the foundation on which they built, to the clarity of the law and of the truth and of the gospel. And if those things are clear, then everything else will fall into place. Amen.